Bring the horns in. We going all in.
Those days, you couldn't really avoid paying attention to what was happening, but I don't think anybody really understood what was happening. And then on the 13th, I happened to be at the Lawyers Guild office when a call came from one of the observers, who was Bill Kunstler, and he said, something is going to happen, this place is going to explode, and lawyers and doctors will be needed. And a few of us decided we had to go. And we got on the next plane from LaGuardia to Buffalo, and we were there a few hours later. And so that was the beginning of the legal team, really. And I'm sure we didn't know what to expect. Of course, a certain picture was being painted if you need lawyers and doctors, but I don't think anyone could imagine what was actually happening or would shortly happen shortly. So that was the beginning, and a group of us arrived at Buffalo. We went to the law school, and there we met with Herman Schwartz, who was teaching at the law school and was affiliated with the ACLU. And as a team, the plan was to go to Wyoming County, where Attica Correctional Facility is located. But it was decided first that we should get some kind of order to enter the prison and see our clients. We didn't actually have clients, but we would need to have some kind of standing to show up. And so the papers were drawn up, and to give lawyers access to their clients who were inmates at Attica. And eventually we drove to the prison in kind of a caravan of cars. And the way I remember it is kind of an excitement that we had actually achieved the first goal, which was to get a court order. And we kind of thought that was a big victory. But we were stopped at roadblocks along the way. And when we finally got close to the area, we began to understand that it was not going to be easy. But there was an argument that, but we have a court order. And the first person who stopped us said, well, you got a court order, but I've got a bayonet. And that was very intimidating. And that was, I think, for me, the first realization that we had nothing. And yet most of us were kind of baby lawyers, some a little more senior. But we'd gone to law school, and we pretty much believed in a court order. And so that was a shock that a court order was going to be ignored. We were not going to get into the to see our clients. It wasn't a question of who exactly are your clients. That didn't matter. But we did get onto what they call the campus, but not the buildings. And we just kind of stood there, paralyzed. I mean, we didn't know what to do. We weren't really afraid for ourselves, but we were getting the picture of what was going on because we could hear things. We could hear what we understood to be guns. And I was certainly not familiar with that. I didn't really know what gunshots were, but when you hear them, you do know. And there were other people there too, but mostly they were the families of guards. So they weren't necessarily friendly to us if they realized who we were. But we kept thinking, well, we're going to get in, we're going to get in. But we stood there all night in the rain. By the time we got there, it was dark out, and so we stood there. There was a coffee truck, which was really not for us. It was for the families of the so-called hostages. And I think it was the Red Cross or the Salvation Army, some do-good organization. And we stood there really helpless. We were completely helpless. And eventually it was morning and we were still standing there. And that's when the medical examiner came out and stood on a staircase. And I was very close to him, to the staircase and to the medical examiner, when he announced that all of the bullets were state-sponsored weapons. And the reporter, there were a lot of reporters there, and everybody started with questions, but the questions made it very clear, not as clear it would eventually be, but we understood what was going on. And it was much worse than I think anyone really imagined.
Bring the horns in. We going all in.